Hello YouTube and welcome back. Now, when I left you, I just strapped up the front brake to allow it to bleed overnight, and then I was going to get on with starting the paintwork on the tank. However, I had a comment from a gentleman called John Beale, who was very helpful indeed, who mentioned that whilst he'd been watching a previous video on the electrics, I think it was, that he noticed the knurled section on my handlebars was sticking out either side of this cover, which was incorrect. I was oblivious to this, I had absolutely no idea. I assumed it was correct. I had no knowledge of Harley Davidsons where I bought this bike, as I've mentioned before. So I removed this again, undid the clamp. Now I knew the bars were split, or should have been split, and indeed these were. However, they weren't split by a factory, and certainly not by Harley Davidson. They appear to have been cut down from two single handlebars. Why and how, I do not know, but they were rough cut, badly cut, knurled over at the edges, and just wrong. So I trimmed them down to what would have been an appropriate size for split handlebars, and now the knurled section fits properly underneath the clamp which lies under here, which is rubber mounted into the yokes. And they had been shimmed because the clamp was trying to clamp down on the smooth part of the bar rather than the knurled part of the bar. Now that it's been sorted properly, they're clamped down on the knurled part. Obviously the bars are now slightly narrower than they were because I've lost a little bit off each one. However, and most critically, they are safe, or safer, certainly, without a shadow of a doubt. So thank you, John, for pointing that out. Thank you for the other comments you've left on the other videos for other novices to Harley like myself, who may have come across my videos, or may just be looking at them out of interest. Useful hints and tips, so thank you again. The bars are now secure, the clamp tight, I can move on. So I was going to start this video with the petrol tank, as I mentioned, but this was more important and clear evidence of how useful YouTube is when you're working on something that you have no prior knowledge of, because without that information I would have been happily going my merry way, unaware that my bars were not correctly clamped down. So excellent, happy days. So let's go and have a look at the tank. Right, so here are our tanks. They are clean inside, which is good. I did originally think they were undamaged apart from the light scratching, but I was wrong. This one, there is a knock there, which will need attending to. And the other one is a very shallow crease there, over a very short distance. And the badges, this one particularly, are a bit scuffed. Now, I've no idea if these tanks are original. They're suspiciously good nick if they are, but having said that, they clearly show evidence of the paint colour which was underneath the rear mudguard. Now, that could be purely coincidental. They might have been painted to match the mudguard and then painted matte black later, I don't know. So, I don't really care either, to be honest. So the plan is to put them in purple and then try and come up with some way of copying the stripes that were on the tank. Now, you can buy them as vinyl stickers, but as I'm in the UK, I haven't been able to find anyone here with them. So the cost of getting them sent from America with postage and an import duty, brings it all up to about £100, which, you know, I'm not willing to spend basically just on something cosmetic. So I will be trying to come up with something that vaguely looks similar, and we'll discuss that later. The badges I will polish to try and get rid of some of the scuffing, and then I'll paint in the black with a small brush again, but otherwise they will remain. I'm sure you could probably get aftermarket copies, but again, they'll probably have to come from America. They probably won't be cheap, and there's, you know, it's not that critical. It's not a concours restoration or anything. It's a tidy up and use it type build. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to get these off, get the remaining rubbers off, get the petrol tap out, and then I'll have to decide whether to paint strip or use abrasion to get this down to bare metal. I think paint strip is the most likely. But anyway, we should get these off first. Yeah, there we go. Right, I'll bring you back when these are off, because you don't need to watch me unscrew little trim screws. Right, trim out of the way. Just leaves our petrol tap, which looks like it may have been weeping slightly around there. It's got PTFE tape on it. Oh, that's okay, that wasn't too tight. There we go. Marked up reserve. We know that was working because I was turned both parts when I was draining the tank. That's in good nick. There's been some seepage past that tape, but nothing horrendous. Right, so the next stage is to put some paint stripper on them. Now, if you've watched any of my BSA videos, and quite frankly I don't blame you if you haven't, you'll know that this is the paint stripper I use. I get it from an automotive paint supplier. It's extremely good. It'll even take powder coat off. Because it's extremely good, it's also pretty nasty stuff. Therefore, eye protection, hand protection, well ventilated area, all that sort of stuff. It's nasty, nasty stuff. It doesn't cost any more than the well-known branded stuff, which I think has got considerably weaker over the years. This stuff works. I like it. You may have a different favourite, I don't know, but this is what I use, and I'll show you why. So I've got eye protection on. I don't have gloves on. I'm going to be careful. PPE is something that's needed for issues far more important than me doing a tank at this current time. So I'll just be careful. So if I liberally apply it, I'm going to put it on all over the top of the tank to begin with. And then I'll bring you back in 15 minutes. And we'll just see what it's done. So I'll turn you off for a second while I do this and bring you back. There you are. 15 minutes. good, I'd say. So I shall continue stripping and bring you back when we've got down to bare metal. And there we are, that's 2 coats and a light scrape. So there's very little paint left on there. I've uncovered some filler, which I will DA off, so I know exactly what's underneath. But that gives you an idea of how quick it is. 2 coats, minor bit of scraping, and I would say 85% of that side is down to metal, maybe slightly more. So the next step is wash all that off, neutralise it, and then I'll run over it with the DA and we'll see what we've got. Right, I was going to show you the bare tank, but such is life. If you recall from earlier in the video, I mentioned the tanks look pretty good. There's a small knock here, which I've now filled. However, once the paint was off, I discovered that it was far from flat, and the old matte black paint was covering a multitude of sins. And on the other one, if you recall, there was a very faint crease here, now gone. And like the other tank, the whole of the front was rippled and out of shape. And the flat section at the rear was also in poor shape. It's not perfect. Filling is not one of my recognised abilities. I'm not quite sure what are my recognised abilities, but anyway, filling isn't one of them. But it's that's pretty close. So I will now re-etch the bare bits of metal where I've sanded off with the filling. And then because of the state of the tank, I will be giving it at least 3 good coats of primer filler, maybe 4, so I've got plenty to rub back through to try and get this thing as smooth as I can, because obviously there are quite a lot of scratch marks and things now in it from all the rubbing down. So there we are. Things are never straightforward. That's part of the fun. And there would of course be absolutely nothing to show you on a video if it was all straightforward. So I'm going to use aerosol etch just to touch in these bits, and then once that's flashed off, I will be giving it lots of primer filler. I'll bring you back when that's getting its guide coat so you can see what it looks like, and then when it's finished. Okay, the tank's had its first rub down. There was an awful lot to get straight, an awful lot, and there are lots of little pinholes, as you can see, which have now been stoppered up. So I'll now flat that back, and then I'm going to give it 2 more coats of high build primer, and then flat that back. And hopefully by the time I've done that, it will be nice and smooth all over. Obviously, the tank is the centre of attention for virtually any bike, so that's why I'm taking a lot more care, shall we say, than I did with the rear mudguard, for instance, with most of which is covered by the seat and the shocks and all that sort of stuff. Everyone looks at your petrol tank, so it's got to be smooth. So we'll rub that down, I'll reprime it, and then rub it down again, and then show you what it looks like before we hit it with the silver. Right, I was going to bring you back when the tank was in its second coat of primer. As you can see, I haven't done. It's actually in its silver base coat, and this is the planned layout for the silver stripes. It's not an exact copy of the original, but if you imagine where the green tape is remaining silver and the rest of it in candy, it will look similar, I think, to the original paint. It's just 9mm fine line tape, and the only reason I'm using that is because it's what I happen to have in. because things are, as I said before, not unreasonably very difficult to get hold of at the minute. There are more important things to worry about than supplying people like me with parts for Harley Davidsons. So I've used what I've got. It's going to be a pastiche of the original. We'll see how it turns out. So I'm now going to cover it in purple base candy and then peel those away and see what we've got. Could be a disaster, could be alright. We shall find out. And here they are inside again. It's quite sunny, as you can see there's light shining off them. The stripes look okay, I think. You may disagree, but I think they're okay. The colour is slightly darker than it looks on camera yet again. But it gives you an idea of what they look like. I will refilm them when they're in place later in another video, but they are lacquered, done. Good enough. The last part of our matte black bodywork is the battery box, which had a good thick coat of whatever. Hard to tell what it is, to be honest, because some of it looks shiny and some of it looks matte. Maybe it's been painted twice, I don't know. Plus the cover, which was originally chrome. So I'm assuming that will be chrome underneath. And then finally the battery strap, which looks like it's just been hit by a bit of overspray while I've been painting the rest of it. So paint strip these, find out what we've got, and then either the chrome will be reusable, in which case I'll just polish it up best I can, or I will spray it silver again, like I did with the back, because I don't want this final bit matte black. So let's have a look, see what it turns out like. Okay, the paint's off. The strap is pretty good, pretty shiny. The box is alright. The sides are poor, unfortunately, but once it's on the bike you mainly see that part. The top is very poor. We're down to the copper here, under the chrome, and there's rust pitting. But the front edge isn't that bad. So let's bring that forward a little bit. So I think once it's all in place, it won't look too shabby, and it is of course a lot better in my opinion, but for my taste, than matte black. So I'm reasonably happy with that. It'll do for the minute. I can't afford to replace all the chrome on this bike, as I said before. So that's acceptable for me for the time being. So that's how it's going to stay.